Hey everybody, welcome to the Shreveport-Bossier Local Lens Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Sutton. I'm here with Mike Braswell, the owner of Black Belt Academy, Bossier Jiu-Jitsu here in Bossier City, Louisiana. The finest Jiu-Jitsu academy in the world, according to me. I don't know about Mike, but I love Mike. Mike, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So I just want to ask you, one, why Jiu-Jitsu? Of all the martial arts, why Jiu-Jitsu?
That's a great question. So I think you find the one, you would do the one that you enjoy the most, number one, right? So I'm not a big, my Kung Fu is better than your Kung Fu type, but you find the one, I do believe in the effectiveness of Jiu-Jitsu, obviously. It's been proven time and time again. It's a very effective self-defense martial art. It's effective in MMA. The combatives, the Army combatives do it. There's GST for police officers. One of my good friends, he's a fourth degree black belt under Pedro Sauer named Chad Pittman, teaches SOC P, and it's got a lot of jiu-jitsu principles in it. And so I enjoy it, and I enjoy the people. There's a lot of great practitioners and a lot of great martial artists. So the martial art that you want to do is going to be the one, obviously, that you enjoy the most. There is a lot to be said about traditional karate. If you look at the UFC, there's a lot of traditional karate guys in it. We teach kickboxing here. We teach Muay Thai here. We have wrestling classes. And so I do like to cross-train. But Jiu-Jitsu, I do believe, is really good because it does allow for somebody who's not as athletic or flexible to be able to defend themselves. And so there's that. But some of the best athletes in the world that you'll ever see do Jiu-Jitsu, right? So it's kind of for everybody. And one great advantage that Jiu-Jitsu does provide is there's a force continuum that you can use. So we have what we call brother-in-law techniques,
Yeah.
right? And then we have you don't have to get in a fight with your best friend, and if he's for some reason, and then you go top, hey, we can calm the situation down. And then we have guys that do mixed martial arts and go out there and get after it, right? And everything in between. So that's an advantage I believe that Jiu-Jitsu does have. But again, it's not to say that, Jiu-Jitsu is better because of this, and this. It's just one advantage that I see. But the martial art that you need to do is the one that you enjoy the most, and then also the one that's going to be effective for whatever your goal may be, right?
Yeah, I know. I love that answer because I did I did Taekwondo when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I think
great.
in the early 90s, late 80s, everybody was kind of doing that. I've done Muay Thai that I absolutely love. I've come here. I've trained with y'all for Jiu-Jitsu, and it is like there's different aspects of different things.
Absolutely.
I loved kicking Bernie Lofton. I know you know Bernie. We did Jiu-Jitsu together. But also, I remember one day like pulling on his neck too hard, and then he flipped me, and he was on top of me, and I was like, "Yeah, see what I did wrong. I'm sorry."
Right.
But one of the things that when I did train with y'all that I learned was it carries over so much to life.
It does.
Talk about that and why.
Yeah, so let me give just one example. In our society, nobody likes to lose, right? And so if you look at social media, it's almost everybody's wins. There are some that are like, oh, look at my loss here. You should feel bad for me, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging people. I'm just saying that's just one thing. But in social media, the quote unquote influencers are always look at how good I'm doing, right? And so then people go, okay, I want to do that good too. And they try something and it's a lot harder than they thought, right? And so Jiu-Jitsu, for example, teaches you how to lose. And so that is a real life lesson. Yes. Another real life lesson is that not everything comes instant gratification. So Jiu-Jitsu is different than, say, baseball. Baseball is an incredibly athletic sport. We love it. We do the whole travel ball thing, so we love it. But baseball is very much hand-eye coordination, right? Depth perception, hand-eye coordination. You're doing the trigonometry in your head and all this other stuff. Jiu-Jitsu is more of a kinesthesis, right? It's not a depth perception thing. I'm not looking at you and going, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm feeling what you're going to do. And sometimes that takes a long time to figure out, right? And so sometimes really good athletes who have really good depth perception come in and they expect to be really good really quick, right? Not always the case. So there's just two examples of how Jiu-Jitsu, transfers into life. Also, and I believe this is true in the Christian sense, if I come and confess a sin to you and you are harsh to me I'm probably never going to confess a sin to you again.
Yeah.
So in jiu-jitsu, if somebody grabs my arm and they arm lock me and I tap, they let me go.
Yes.
So what I had was vulnerability, right? You had my arm, you could have broke it, but I tapped, so I had vulnerability, you showed mercy, and that built trust. So there is something for the church right there. If somebody is vulnerable to you and you show them mercy, they will trust you more.
Yes. And
you build that both ways. And so jiu-jitsu builds, a lot of times the best friends you'll have are people that you do jiu-jitsu with, because you've been vulnerable to them, even if you didn't mean to be. You're like, it's not something like, I'm going to be vulnerable to you right now, take my arm. But it's just something that happens, and subconsciously we start trusting those people more.
Right. Yeah.
And so you build this really tight bond.
Yeah, I like that. So 100% I agree with you. And when I was coming, and just for the record, I stopped because my schedule changed, and it had nothing to do with the awesomeness that is here. But I just remember the very first time I came, and I knew Randy Arndale was I knew Randy, and I could see that he was the instructor. And I sat in my truck, and this was over on Benton Road, and it took me 20 minutes to get out. And I have no idea why. I wasn't scared that anybody was going to hurt me. It was just so intimidating.
It is.
And then I come in, and within the first week, I'm breathing, I'm almost dying the first week, and I'm breathing heavy, and I'm like, okay, just relax. You're not going to die. This person's not going to kill you. And then I was relaxed. And so for me, that carried over into my mental health. Hey, if I'm struggling, if I'm having anxiety or whatever, I just have to breathe. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I think one reason we get nervous, and I could see why people would get nervous coming into a jiu-jitsu school, right? You got a bunch of people wearing pajamas choking each other,
That's right?
And so it's not something we do on the daily basis. Right. I think that's something that we jiu-jitsu guys don't realize is the vast majority of people don't do this.
No.
Right? Yeah. There are so many people who've never walked into a jiu-jitsu school and gone, okay, this is what this is, right? They see it on YouTube, they watch it on UFC. But when you get out there and then the first time you have a guy who knows what he's doing, it's like, oh, I don't feel like I can do anything. But in reality, what we need to fix is the understanding that our value doesn't come from our performance.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so
that's good.
Your value doesn't come from your performance. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go perform. So two things can be true. You should, your value comes from the purchase for the price that was paid for you. Mm-hmm. That's where your value comes from. Yep. But also, you should do everything as you do under Christ from the Christian perspective. But even if you're not a Christian, your value does not come. You're not somehow, okay, I'm more valuable to the human race because I can tap people.
Right.
Or I'm less valuable because I got beat today.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of, so take that out. Your value in jiu-jitsu even changes, right? So we have some of the best competitors in the world, and eventually they can't compete anymore.
Right.
They just get old, change. Some of them don't. Some of them are aging like super fine wine, and they're awesome, right? And so, but your experiences and your knowledge, you can pass that down to somebody else. You can help somebody else in self-defense. You can give somebody an outlet. You can do a lot of things just because you're not on the top of your game anymore, because we get older, we break down, and we're going to fight it till we can't fight it anymore. Right. But at the end of the day, your value doesn't come from your ability to perform. Mm-hmm. I know some people may disagree with that, but that's fine too. Sure. But with that being said, now that doesn't mean you shouldn't perform. I think you should go out and be the best version of yourself you can be, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and socially. Mm-hmm. Right? Be the best version of all of those things. But at the same time, you have to remember where your value comes from.
Yeah. We talk about being successful. So obviously you and I are both Christians, but the world looks at success differently. Do I have a big house? Do I have a big truck? Am I rich? Mm-hmm. I look at, did I make a difference for God's kingdom today? A lot of times I feel miserably, right? But that's where my value is.
Yes.
How can I grow God's kingdom today? But that's one of the great things about, and I think a lot of martial arts gyms get this right, and I know y'all do because I've been a part of it, but you're welcoming to people. There's no spitting contests. Obviously, if you and I lay down on the mat right now, you can tap me out in 30 seconds, but I can still learn something, right? And that's something that I had to learn was okay, it's okay if you got tapped out 25 times out of 26. Mm-hmm. You learned. And like you said, I tell people this all the time when we talk about exercise. I told one of my clients a few months ago, I said, hey, if you'll just do twice a week, you'll be doing more than 95% of everybody else. And she said, are you serious? I'm like, yes.
Twice a week's 200% more than the person doing zero.
That's right. So it's huge in that, and it's huge in learning, value systems and things like that. What do you think is, what's most important in someone who comes in here? What aspect or trait do they have that makes them successful when they come to?
Oh, the ability just to keep showing up.
Yeah.
Honestly. I know that's so cliche. Man, that's so cliche. It's kind of like when you do a self-defense seminar, you're always like, all right, everybody be aware of your surroundings, right? But it's the reason that we say it is because, like, if you walk through Walmart right now and you see people looking down at their phone, they don't have a clue what's going on, right? And then, so just be willing to keep coming, right? And be willing to lose. Be willing to win with humility, but just keep coming. It's. I don't know anybody. There's two things. My instructor Pedro Sauer says this. He's like, I do not know anybody who regrets to keep doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
But I know everybody who regrets quitting.
Yeah.
Right. So that's number one. And I also say this. I know I have an idea. Like the worst jiu-jitsu guy that I've ever met. Like they couldn't get their belt tied right.
Don't talk about me like
no.
No.
They don't, they just cannot get the technique down for whatever reason.
Right.
I never said, well, that person doesn't need to do jiu-jitsu. Right? No matter how bad or how good somebody is, they deserve, their jiu-jitsu is just as important as everybody else's. So if they'll just keep coming, and be a good. The most important thing, obviously, is to keep coming. The second is to be a good training partner for your people, because if you're good to them, they're going to be good to you, right? Treat others like you want to be treated, and so if you'll do that, those two things: show up, treat others like you want to be treated. Man, we're going to have a blast.
Yeah. You're
going to get better. There's going to be ups and downs, but the downs are where we learn, right?
Yeah.
I tell everybody this. I was at a hotel one time. And there's a sign that said no shaving in the hot tub. And the reason that they had that sign there was because somebody decided to shave in the hot tub. Right? I don't know why they did that.
Yeah.
And I can promise you that the person who had to clean that up was at a pretty low point.
Yes.
But you know what? They learned that day. They learned that day. We're going to put this sign up, and that's going to prevent something. I forgot where that was.
I love that.
They learned that day.
I'm going to title that.
No shaving in the
podcast
hot tub.
is going to be titled. No shaving in the hot tub. I love that. What do you think is, as far as a self-defense tactic? So I think one of the things that the kids, we talk about sometimes, like, well, hey, what do you do if somebody attacks you? You try to get away and then you run. Like, don't try to use your jiu-jitsu tactics. My kids are 10 and 12. But you're probably not going to take down a grown man most of the time. Let's get away from them. What do you see for people that say, hey, what do I do when I need to defend myself?
Well, obviously it's different for children and adults.
Right.
For kids, we'll teach them stuff like be vocal, especially in public, right? This is not my dad.
Yeah,
right. So if you're just crying at Walmart, people are lining up to discipline you. Like, I don't want a part of that one, that's just a bad kid who didn't get their cereal. Right. But if we start saying, this is not my dad or this is not my mom, every one of the mothers in there, like, their ears turn and they become the mother you don't want to mess with because you're hurting, just like in the wild, if a baby deer makes a sound, the mama comes running, right? So stuff like that, being vocal, so the self-defense tactics are different from a child to an adult. For the kids, the main thing, we talk about is, number one, and my adults too, this is something that the bad guys always got an advantage, but for a couple different reasons. One is a lot of times they're bigger. Predators don't pick on things that you're going to beat them up usually. Number two is there's an advantage gap that they know they're going to fight oftentimes before we do because they just attack us.
Yeah.
Number three, there's a morality gap because so many times, and I've seen it in videos, people are getting attacked and they're like, well, stop, why are you doing this? Like, their frontal cortex is still working while the other person's only handling mammal brain, right? Yeah. And then there is, then there's legal things. Cops are always at a disadvantage because, the bad guy's spraying bullets and the cop shoots and the bullet leaves, and wherever it hits, he's responsible or she's responsible for it. Yeah. So you have to overcome all these disadvantages. You've got to think before you pull the trigger, and they're just pulling the trigger. right? And so there's all these things that we try to overcome, but then also the punishment has to fit the crime. So somebody had a 3-year-old one time in a class call me a wicked doo-doo head. Right? You're a wicked doo-doo head. That was awesome. He was probably, let's see, man, he's probably 28 years old now. Has no idea that on this podcast, when he was 3 years old, he called me a wicked doo-doo head. So somebody calls you a wicked doo-doo head, well, you don't pick them up and slam them on their head for it. Right? In fact, there's nothing anybody can say to you to make you want to fight. It's either true or it's not. So I'm either a wicked doo-doo head, and that's my fault for being said wicked doo-doo head, or I'm not, and I'm not going to beat somebody up over a lie. Right? So that is not, I'm regurgitating information. That's Silvio Barron told me that, at a seminar. So I like to cite my sources so it doesn't make me sound as smart as some of these folks really are. And then when it does get physical, the thing I like about jiu-jitsu is somebody tries to hit you, we can get on top of them, we don't have to hit them back. Or if it gets super duper 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 violent, we can do what we need to do to get away. And I've seen the fruits of that, and my police officers are like, hey man, we took this guy down, we didn't hurt him, I didn't get hurt, he didn't get hurt. Great for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I watched the video this week, and it was a cop, and he had taken somebody down, and it showed how, like, hey, they broke it down. Like, here's the hip, here's like they grabbed him, they took his gun away, here's the hip toss, and here's the arm bar, here's the kimura, here's they put the cuffs on, and it was like all this happened, and the guy they didn't tear his rotator cuff, they didn't break his arm, nothing happened because he was training jiu-jitsu. And I think martial arts gives you a power and a confidence that nothing else on the world gives you.
Yeah, sure can.
Because obviously, like I said, there's not many people coming up here at 6 a.m. to train.
Well,
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
My favorite part is it gives you the confidence not to, I mean, I don't, like, if I'm fighting for my self-defense is one thing, and obviously we'll do what we have to do, but if we're fighting for our ego, man, that's a fragile ego.
That's the problem.
Right? If I'm trying to beat this guy up who doesn't know anything to prove that I can, man, maybe I just need to have a little bit more confidence. Like, look, it doesn't really matter. My value doesn't come from this. I think you should take pride in your training. I think you should, not the sinful type of pride, obviously, but the good type of, all right, I'm proud of this. We're going to work hard, and we worked hard, and we did this. And when you go compete, go to win.
That's right.
Right? There's nothing wrong with working hard and winning something. Right? You just do it healthily.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And look, you owe it to your opponent to give them everything you got.
Yeah.
And if they beat you, good job, because I worked hard. Right? Yeah. And so that's the thing is your value doesn't come from it, but you should also be the best version of yourself in every way possible. And we can do both. There's nothing wrong with doing both.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Love that. I mean, pride. I think you have to have pride in what you're doing, right? Not the simple kind.
Yeah.
But also not trying to be a jerk and everything.
Yeah.
I think, one of the last times I rolled in here, it was a younger guy, and I was like, look, I'm 43. You're stronger than me. I just told you, I was like, hey, I'm just going to concede the fact that you're stronger, you're a better man, all that stuff. And I was like, so can we just have a good time now? He's like, oh yeah. I was like, awesome.
Right.
Good. Like, don't hurt me. I have to work the rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's cool about jiu-jitsu, man. There's some amazing competitors. I love watching them, right? And back in the day, I used to be really competitive, right? And there's some MMA guys, man. I love working with them. Yeah. I mean, they're awesome. You yell at them, like, and then, we got people that work with their hands that do a lot more good than I do, right? Yeah. We have surgeons here. Yeah. We have physical therapists. We have people, doctors. Yeah. We have people who do a lot of good for a lot of people who don't need to be punching other people in the face and breaking their hands, right? Yeah. And we have police officers, right? And they're like, look, I'm never going to get in the ring. I don't want to compete, but man, I really would like to have another tool in my belt to go home. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And then we have people that the vast majority of people that train, vast majority, not everybody, I don't want to make, 100% of people, but the vast majority of people are training to remove a vulnerability, right? So for example, I am getting bullied, which means I'm vulnerable, and I don't like feeling vulnerable. Right. So I'm going to do something to make me feel less vulnerable, right? I want to get in shape because I feel vulnerable about my physical prowess. So I'm going to do something that's going to prevent me, that's going to help that vulnerability. I have social anxiety, and I need to do something that's going to help me feel not as vulnerable in a crowd, right? I'm working, and I don't feel like I have enough tools in my tool belt to go home, and that's a vulnerability, so I'm going to do that, right?
No, 100%. Yeah. So mine, the reason I came was mental health issues. Like I had an issue with my family, you know, some of it, and I was like, I need to figure out how to handle this without going crazy on somebody. And it helped. It made a huge difference.
Yeah, mental health. I mean, there's a lot of people who, you know what, they you know what's interesting and why jiu-jitsu helps. And I don't know if you know Clint Davis.
Oh yeah, we're good friends.
Yeah, Clint's, oh man, he's such a good friend of mine. And shout out to Clint.
Yeah.
He's such a good friend of mine, and he's developing TRJJ, which is trauma responsive jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I love it.
And the idea is there's a lot of physiological factors that happen with anxiety, right? And we have, you know, adrenaline, we're in constant fight or flight. So now you get out here and you're training and you're just rolling, and for 5 minutes, you're burning off some of the adrenaline, which I don't know if that's exactly how it works, so forgive me if I'm physiologically wrong, but you're burning off some of the adrenaline, you're burning off some of the ATP-PC, you're burning off some of the anxiety, you're getting really tired, but for that 5 minutes you're rolling, you're not thinking about your bills, you're not thinking about your problems. You get a 5-minute release while you're awake to not think about it.
Yeah, awesome.
And then you do another one, and you do another one. Now for 30 minutes, you haven't thought about anything that's been wrong in your life. You're only focused on what's in front of you. And all the adrenaline starting to go away, and now you've subconsciously washed your mind a little bit, and now you get to go and and so now instead of thinking about all the things that stress you, you start thinking, man, that was a really good move that guy hit me with tonight. Right? It's like the meme. There's a meme that's out there, and it's a lady, and she's looking at us. He's probably thinking of another woman, and it shows what he's actually thinking about. He's like, guy passing my half guard, can't figure it out.
That's right, yeah. Exactly.
And so, but you know what? If a guy or a girl is anxious, and the only thing they're worried about right now is somebody passing your guard, man, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good. And Clint does great work, and he's doing some great work.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I love that stuff. I mean, he and I have talked about that. The matter of fact, I'm on his staff, and we talked about it here. He was like, "Hey, can you come meet me and roll with me at jiu-jitsu?" I was like, "I haven't been in forever." He's like, "Well, that's where I'm meeting you." I'm like, "Fine." So anyway, so we talked about it, and yeah, Clint's amazing. He's doing phenomenal stuff.
Oh, dude, Clint's on another level, man.
He really is, and we talked about that. I talked about that with Ross Githens, one of his counselors. I go to their counselor. I was with him this morning. I was like, you know, just to be in the same atmosphere as these guys. So you, Clint, Ross, other people that I deal with in town, it's like it makes you better because they're doing, like, Clint's doing his part to make the world better, right? Yeah. You're doing your part. I'm trying to do my part. And as long as we're around people like that, then it just brings us to a different level.
My instructor is a guy named Pedro Sauer.
Right.
He's very famous. He's a super nice guy.
Yeah.
What's interesting about him is, like, if he meets you and you see him in the airport, like 10 months later, and he just meets you, he's gonna remember your name. He's a genius. Awesome. He's so awesome. And I asked him one time, so there's a thing about presence. There's a book, I forgot the name of it. It's about something manly men, and it talks about presence. Mm-hmm. And he's like, just an idea of your presence being there. So if you have a daughter and the guy's about to take her out, he's going to treat her different when you're around. Yeah. Just is what it be, right? And I forgot the name of the coach, so y'all forgive me. I know I'm being vague, you know. But this coach walks in, and nobody knows who he is. And everybody kind of looks over at him, and they start shooting baskets, and they all start moving towards him. Come to find out, they didn't know who he was, but he's like a multiple-time national champion basketball coach. Right. But he had a presence about him that people are like, that's the dude. And we all know people like that, right? So you know people that when they walk in the room, everybody stops talking because they somehow vibe-wise suck the life out of the room. Well, I kind of want to be the opposite. I want to be like Pedro, because when Pedro Sauer walks in a room, if you've never seen a picture of him, he's got a presence about him. Like, oh, that's the dude. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, man, how do you do that? Because he kind of lights up the room when he comes in. And he looks at me, and he's got a real thick Brazilian accent. He's, oh, just like this, my friend. He's so cool. And he goes, my friend, I just treat others like I want to be treated. Yeah. And then right there, I can tell you where we were. We were coming on a seminar. We were going to eat. I believe we were going to Torchy's Tacos. And we're on I-20 before they shut both lanes down, going over the bridge. And I remember saying, I'm sorry, Lord. Because the secret to making other people around you happier, better, more comfortable was right there in Matthew.
Yeah.
Treat others like I want to be treated. Do unto others, I'd have them do unto you.
Yeah.
Right? And it took this guy quoting my Savior for me to go, oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. There it is.
It's funny when God slaps you.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So, and Clint's one of those guys, like, I even told him the other day, I called him about something, and I was having an issue, and he didn't mean to fix it. But he just said, yeah, this. Oh, man.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome.
The most profound thing he's told me, and this was a few weeks ago, as I said, with my concierge business, I've been only doing it full time 2 months. And it's going well, but it's like it needs to go a little better. And I said, I got to do this. This doctor's really been giving me a lot of patience, and it's Dr. Natalia Lorgis, who I'm 100% thankful for. We work well together, and I was like, I'm just glad that God sent her to me. And he's like, oh, stop. I was like, oh gosh, what? He's like, you're thinking linearly. You're thinking if that doctor doesn't give you patience, your business is going to fail. No, that's how God's blessing you right now. Right. How is he going to bless you late? And I'm like, why do you, Clint, shut up. Right. But it's like he says these things, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think about that all the time. Like, no, God, if God wants me to be successful, he can bless me with whoever. Like, I may just meet 50 strangers one week, and that's how he did it. Yeah. But that's his plan. So last thing I want to ask you, if somebody is sitting, wherever they're listening to this later, watching on YouTube, whatever, and they say, man, I really have been thinking about trying jiu-jitsu, martial arts, but I just don't know. What would you tell them to encourage them to just try it?
Try it.
Yeah.
Just try it. I mean, and, man, there's lots of great schools around here. Mm-hmm. Man, they're all awesome. I get along with all of them.
Yeah.
It's like all restaurants, but have a little different flavor.
Yeah.
And, man, find where you're comfortable, find where you're happy, and find where your goals align. Right? And, I told somebody literally messaged me the other day. They're like, hey, I signed up in another school. I'm like, great. I'm glad you're training. Right? So find the one that you're comfortable in. Right? That's the most important thing. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to do it. Right? So obviously we're going to try to make you uncomfortable in jiu-jitsu because we want to get you comfortable with being uncomfortable, because then you can get comfortable in really uncomfortable situations. And so find the one that makes you comfortable. Find the one that aligns with your goals, because there's lots of different reasons to train. Some people love to compete. Dude, we compete, but it's not the only thing I do. But I love to compete, man. Some people are like, man, I want to go do this. They want to fight MMA. Okay, we got some MMA fighters. I'm a little different, and that I'm not an MMA school, but we have some MMA guys.
Sure.
There's some great MMA schools around, right? They're awesome, and they're good buddies of mine, and they just, there's a lot of reasons to train. Find one that you want to do. Find one that makes you happy. Find one that's, if you got a buddy that trains, man, go train with your buddy. What better way to get closer with your buddy than to strangle him, right?
That's right. Let's joking.
But I've heard this many a times. That's not my saying. None of this stuff that I'm telling you is mine, right? It makes me sound way smarter than I am. Not a bit of it that I have told you today is mine. I have gotten the opportunity to meet some really cool people and do some really cool things, and I am regurgitating just things that I've been taught, right? And so, but the hardest belt to get is your white belt. Every time. The hardest one to get. When I started martial arts in September of 1999, I had a buddy of mine who wanted to take me into class, and I was like, man, I'm going to play fall baseball, right? Well, they didn't have fall baseball for my age. They didn't have it for my age. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go do a class. I fell in love.
That's awesome.
I fell in love with it. I did it was a Taekwondo school, and they didn't even have my gi yet. So my best friend owned that school. So to this day, he's my best friend. So I do not mind telling the story. I don't know why, but for a month and a half, I did not have a uniform. I had a belt though, and he was the best man at my wedding. So, he's older than I am, but I was 14 and he was like 21, 22, but he already owned it. He was an entrepreneur early.
Yeah.
And he already owned the school, and his uncle at the time was 35, 36, and his uncle was teaching there, and his uncle's actually the one that performed my wedding ceremony, right? So 2 people that mean a lot to me let me test at a Taekwondo academy in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt with my belt tied on, right? So I say that to say this, like, you know, people are like, oh, I don't want to do it without my uniform. Bro, I literally did my first testing without anything but a pair of shorts. And then, and they weren't like fashionable shorts either. Like they had pockets, and they, I wore socks that before they were, they came back. It's coming back in for people who wear tall socks. Like my son's 11 and he wears the tall socks, and I was wearing tall socks whenever no shows were cool. So now that tall socks are cool, now I'm wearing no shows. So it's like, all right, I'm just gonna, whatever's cool, I'm gonna go to the opposite end of that bell curve. And so, all that to say that it turned into me doing it as doing a Taekwondo testing in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt with a belt on turned into a career that's 26 years in now.
Love it. How do people find you if they want to learn more?
BossierJiu-Jitsu.com. Bossier, JIUJITSU.com. You can email me, Mike at BossierJiu-Jitsu.com. You can, Louisiana Black Belt Academy. So we have 3 schools. Louisiana Black Belt Academy covers the Northern Louisiana Black Belt Academy covers Bossier, Minden, and North DeSoto. We have 3 locations to train at. And then, of course, my friend, if you're down south, my friend Steve Miller's in Morgan City. That's Louisiana Black Belt Academy, Morgan City. And then Champagne Martial Arts in Lafayette, in Monroe. I've got a good friend of mine over there named Joseph Coots who teaches. In Little Rock, in the Cabot area, is one of my affiliates. His name is Eugene Prowse. And then in Mountain Home, Arkansas, I've got an affiliate up there named Eric. Hold on. I got hit in the head a lot, Eric. Sorry. If you're listening to this, don't be mad at me. You're going to be mad at me. I'm getting hit in the head a lot. He's right there on the wall, too. He's one of my black belts. Eric Turner.
Okay, good.
Oh, man. Sorry, Eric.
We made it.
Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. He's right there. He's the guy. He's a great guy.
Awesome.
And him and Mike Pace are all there. See, I remembered Mike's on the first try. Mike Pace is they're 2 black belts up in Mountain Home.
Sweet.
And they're awesome.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.